Hello and welcome back to On the Workbench. Today we're taking a look at the Kobalt 24 volt max brushless 3/8" drive ratchet. So this is a tool I picked up several months ago. It's been sitting on my workbench waiting for me to find a good excuse to use that I thought this might do well with. This was a tool that I hadn't really planned on picking up originally, but early in 2021 they had a buy more, save more deal. I was able to add this into a combo kit or a purchase that made it worthwhile, at least to me, I thought, to buy. Let's take a look at this and see what we think of this ratchet. So on the top, you can always sort of date your tools, if you will, by what's shown here on the top. So the newest tool on here, I believe, is probably the die grinder, if I'm not mistaken, for what's showing on here. All these tools have been out for a while. This tool is not new to 2021. And just a quick look at specs from what they're claiming. It's a 3/8" drive, and perhaps more importantly, up to 250 RPM and up to 150 foot-pounds of, keyword here, manual hand torque, 150, and presumably that's electric torque of 55 foot-pounds. So this is not going to replace an impact driver by any means, but this is something that might be useful for being able to just break something loose, and it's got some decent length to it. So out of the box, you get the manual. We'll set that aside, and the tool. Put the cardboard aside. Pull that out like that. And what's interesting about this is the head does come sealed up here, which I actually have to say is a nice touch. And the first thing I notice here is there's definitely a little bit of shine on the head here from the lubricant that is on here. Not necessarily a bad thing, but at least keeps it from rusting. There's also a snap ring here that we could use to service the parts. Then on the back here is where our battery mounts. And so let's just take a quick measurement of this ratchet from the head to where the battery mounts is about 13 inches, but realistically to where your hand's going to go, it's going to be about a 1 foot of distance that you're going to be able to apply torque through on the ratchet. And so this takes a 3/8" drive socket. And now for batteries, we can use the 2 amp-hour battery, which is probably the ideal battery for this. And that's going to slip on the end of the ratchet there. And then on close to the front end of the ratchet, if I pull this down, like a little quick half press, it does put a light there, which is really nice because your hand ratchets don't have that. There's plenty of times when you're working on an engine bay that having an extra light at the end of your ratchet wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And then if I pull down on the trigger, so by my rough count there's at least about 6 detectable settings that I can tell by my ear for the speeds as I go from 0 to max throttle there with no load. And then to change the direction, we simply have to reverse the knob here on top. This is definitely a little bit chunky. Now, the 2 amp-hour battery I think is going to be the most ideal one just because of the size of this. But in theory, if you were really feeling crazy, and I don't know why you would do this, you could get out the big old 6 amp-hour battery. And then with the 6 amp-hour battery, unfortunately, it still doesn't quite stand up, but lays down. And so you could use that. That would be really ridiculous. But maybe more practically, you get out the ultimate output battery, because that profile is not that much bigger than the 2 amp. But I think this tool is really intended for use with the 2 amp-hour battery. And so now what I want to do is I want to see, well, how practical is this? Because from the outset, I'll admit, maybe I've got a little bit of a bias against this, and I'm not super excited about this. In my opinion, this is not a tool that I would be initially thinking of as one that would get you into the Kobalt line, but maybe one that sort of entertains you while you're in it. So that's at least how I feel from the outset going into this. Now let's put it through a few quick checks to see, well, I don't know, does it work and what do I think of it? So now let's go to a car. I've got an oil change to do on a Volvo XC90, and we'll use that as a test bench for what we think of this ratchet. The first test we're going to be doing, I've got a 10mm snap-on semi-deep socket, and I need to remove the underskirting on this Volvo XC90. So we'll get under the car and remove those. Okay, so far that is a success. That's 2 for 2. So for removing the underskirting, I got the rest of the bolts out. There are 6 in total. And I thought that actually worked pretty well with this semi-deep socket here. So now we're going to trade this out. And it's going to be time to remove the oil filter, which is a canister oil filter on the top. And to do that, I've got this is a snap-on oil filter socket. This is a flip socket, if you will. And I'm going to be using the 36 millimeter side with a wobble extension. And since I don't have like a 1 foot long wobble extension, I've got a second extension doubled up here. So there's definitely a little bit of torque loss going with 2 extensions together and the wobble to get down in it. So now let's go over to the car and see how this performs. Let's see if I can get some light down there. So here's the setup here. You can see there's the oil filter cap, my socket and extensions, and I've got to use the extension here to get up and around the edge of the engine there. And so there's my point where I'm going to attach the ratchet, and we'll see how it does. There we go. We're going to try this again. That first time seemed like a fail. I'm going to have to use the hand part of this ratchet here to try to loosen this up. If you're hearing fireworks in the background, that's because today is July 3rd, 2021, and I have plenty of neighbors that are shooting off fireworks while I am doing this oil change. Okay, so still no bueno for this to get loose. We'll try this again. So far, I have to say I'm less than impressed with that, but I can also appreciate it not wanting to damage anything either. Just using it manually. To use this manually is, well, I'll just describe it as awkward. And now that's where I can loosen the filter cup by hand. And so I'll just leave it like that. So did it work for loosening the filter here? After I loosened it up, it still wasn't able to turn it when I could still turn it by hand. Felt like this was still a few foot-pounds short of being able to turn this, but I can appreciate it kind of timing out so it doesn't give me a wicked kickback. So we'll at least give it a push. It didn't really work great, but if you've got to use this by hand as I was using there, definitely not an appealing function of this ratchet. One more quick test for this ratchet on a different vehicle. This time we'll be installing brake slide pins on a 1990 Toyota Corolla. So now after playing with this here for several weeks here, I've got to say this ratchet actually is kind of handy, but I'll say only in the right circumstance. So the video clip that you might have just seen was for me replacing a set of caliper slide pins. And this was really nice to be able to slide back behind the brake caliper to be able to put in the slide pins on a brake job that I did recently. And it worked really well. It's a little bit loud. It's a little bit annoying just to listen to. And the mechanism here, it works, but it's definitely a lot of effort to go to click it. Not that big of a deal, but it's also easy to click it if you're wearing gloves. And so that's worked well. And I've got to say that in the right circumstance, this actually works well. Other circumstances, it's probably not going to be my first go-to tool by any means. But in the right circumstance, yeah, the depth of the head here isn't terrible. Could be thinner. You know, it would be nice, in my opinion, if they would have basically taken the size of the shaft here, extended it down, and kind of made this a little bit more small and compact here, and kind of move the motor down a little bit towards the back and the grip, and to make this top head here a little bit thinner. Would have been kind of the best of all the worlds of having a electric ratchet that's similar to an extended reach ratchet, and having something in the middle as a sweet spot would have been good, but It still works. It does its job. I've got no complaints about it. It's probably what I would put in the category of a luxury tool. This would not be a first tool purchase I'd have for the Kobalt lineup, but it works well, and in the right circumstance, yeah, it actually could be a very useful tool for you. You'll just have to figure out if the about $100, give or take, is actually worth it in your specific situation. I can't make that call, but I do think it does actually have a purpose and does have a place, and something that maybe you would find useful, particularly if you're into auto mechanics and auto repair. Any other questions, comments, or uses, put it down below in the comments. If you like this kinds of video, give it a thumbs up. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day. Bye.